employee who's, unpredictable, you've got now a computer avatar which does the selling for you. So should you be concerned? Well, no. See, I believe that in the very near future, you're going to have your own digital AI, which actually helps you be more effective as a sales leader. These AIs will do everything for you. They'll sit in on your meetings, they'll take notes. When you have to do a call and you can't be bothered, they'll do the call for you. They'll even go on dates with you. There's a new service called Snap, and basically rather than going on dates with people, you train an AI about the kinds of people you like, and the AI interviews them for you, and then tells you whether or not you should bother. Isn't the future wonderful? This is just the beginning of the world that I believe is coming in the next 10 years. The next 10 years is going to feel like 100 years of change. But the most successful brands are going to be the ones that use technology, not to be just a little bit better, but to completely reinvent experiences for the people they serve. So what should you do about it? Well, one of the best pieces of advice I can give you is not to listen to me. I'm too old. Listen to the youngest people in your life. Listen to your kids. Listen to everyone that's not here. Look at the way your kids behave. How do they use technology? How do they use apps? What do they pay attention to? How can you increase your presence in the digital worlds where your future customers are going to be? I also want to give you I call this a mind grenade. It's like a challenge question. Just imagine this. If you were starting your career in 10 years' time, so it's 2035, what would you be doing differently than what you're doing today? What ideas for the future can you apply to your business practices today? Right, so here's the second question I want you to think about. I talked a little bit about how the world's going to change in the next 10 years. But how is AI going to change the way we work? If you think back to the world of 2020, one of the biggest changes that we all embraced was remote work. We learned we could connect with our customers and our co-workers using technology. No, it's interesting. I spent a lot of time in Japan. Who's here from Japan? Okay. You see, a bit shy. I can see Japan's one of my favorite countries. And I was talking to my friend in Japan. He goes, Mike, you have no idea what remote work is. He goes, during the pandemic, it was so hard for us to get people who to work at retail stores. We were actually using telepresence robots. So you would go into a 7-Eleven and you would actually see a robot like this that was being operated by someone on the other side of the country. Now, how do you feel about this? If I walked into a store and I saw that robot, I'm walking straight out. Because I've seen enough movies to know this ends badly for the humans. But it made me think, what if this whole remote work trend was not about flexibility, but about something else? What if this was the beginning of actually a new industrial revolution? Think about it. We've had 4 industrial revolutions so far. There was steam, electricity, computation in the 1950s, then there was the internet, mobile phones, the Internet of Things. What if 2020, the pandemic, was the beginning of a new industrial revolution? One powered not by traditional forms of energy, but by artificial intelligence. And if you see it this way, you start to think, well, could this be a whole new way of thinking about the value of work and the value of companies? If you go back in history, there was sort of this key moment in the 1830s when they invented electricity. But it took a long time, almost 100 years, before somebody, Henry Ford, came along and said, so this electricity idea, what if, I know this is crazy, what if we don't just try to power factories differently? What if we try to design them differently too? And you may have heard of this idea of the moving assembly line. But at its heart was this insight that to really get the benefits of a new technology, you couldn't just use it the way you used things before. You had to find a new way of working, a smarter way of working. And I think what's going to happen in the next few years is that we're all going to figure out a smarter way of doing things with the benefit of this new technology. And I think this is going to happen in 4 important ways. ways: scale, speed, sustainability, and scope. So let's think about that, scale. Just take a minute, and I'm sure many of you working in the beauty and wellness industry for many years, think about what's changed in the last 20 years. I mean, 20 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago, the biggest cosmetics brands in the world were brands like Revlon. You know, they hired big celebrities, they did expensive marketing campaigns, people like Cindy Crawford, and they used this impossible image of beauty to sell product. 2 years ago, Revlon filed for bankruptcy. Why? The world's changed. Their traditional means of retail sales was under challenge from people like you. And not just you, from entirely new brands that never existed before. You know, Kylie Jenner became a billionaire creating a cosmetic brand. She had no stores, she sold on Shopify, she outsourced production to another company, she spent no money on marketing, she just used Instagram. More recently, I don't know if you were reading, but Selena Gomez has just become a billionaire. She's now worth $1.3 billion US from her beauty brand, Rare Beauty. Why? Well, she found a new way of connecting with a community without stores, but through Instagram and critically, TikTok. She found a way of connecting with her customers and community around the values that mattered most to them, like mental health, diversity, and being accepted. She started this company in September 2020. And of course you might say these are celebrities. Celebrities can sell products. Then you look at a company like Walsh, right? This was started by an ordinary intern 10 years ago. But once again, they built their business through digital community, through digital channels like Instagram, and they completely changed the entire economics of the beauty industry. You have that power too. Because in this new world where you can leverage technology and apps to connect with your community and customers, there is no limit to what you can achieve. The second big change is speed. In this world that's coming, you have to respond faster than ever before. One of the other companies that was born out of the pandemic is something I'm sure many of you are familiar with, a company called Shein. Do any of you shop from Shein? Okay, I'm sure if you've got teenage kids, they know this company very well. Shein is amazing. So you have companies like H&M and Zara, they call them fast fashion. Shein is real-time fashion. So H&M and Zara might see a trend in Europe, in Milan, Paris. They'll have a similar, cheaper version of that outfit in 6 to 8 weeks. Shein has an algorithm that's watching TikTok and social media. They can actually take a scan of the item. They can send it to one of 6,000 manufacturers in Shenzhen or Guangdong. They can have it in the market in 6 to 8 days at a fraction of the cost. It's incredible what they're doing. And the amazing thing is, 7 years ago, Shein was a wedding dress manufacturer in Guangdong. That shows you the power of reinventing yourself in this new age. But of course, a big part of this is also sustainability in the environment. I don't know if any of you use tools like ChatGPT. Do you know every 5 questions you type in takes 1 bottle of water to pull a data set? So one of the biggest challenges going forward as we start to use more technology is also finding ways to get power in a more efficient and energy effective way. But the final way that business is going to be different in the future, I believe, is scope. Because it's not enough to do what you did yesterday a little bit better. We have to find new ways of doing things. You know, in August last year, India joined a very small club of countries that have managed to successfully land on the moon. And the amazing part of the story is not that they did it, but how they did it. I don't know if any of you saw this terrible movie that came out a few years ago. It was called Moonfall. Did any of you see this movie, Moonfall? Okay, 3 of you. So that was the problem. Hollywood spent $150 million making a movie that these 3 people watched. India spent $70 million, and they actually went to the moon. How did they do it? It wasn't through a cheap contact center. The Indians were very clever. They used AI, machine learning, computer vision. They basically used the latest technology to do things that no one thought was possible. And for me, this is a lesson. What can you do using technology that you could never have done before? Because if you start to imagine the future of work, for me, it's really about unlocking the new productivity potential, about being bolder about the future, rather than simply repeating the past. So as a next action, this is what I would encourage you to do. Think about how you work today. What are tasks and activities that you can use technology to be more productive and more efficient? If you had more time because of technology, how would you use it? Here's a second mind grenade for you to think about. Imagine a future in which robots do most of the work inside a company. What would be the things that humans still do best? What would you be doing? And what are the things where humans and robots would be working together? What would that look like? That brings me to the third and last thing I want to talk to you about today, which is how do you prepare yourself for the future that's coming? Like I said, in the next few years, you're going to start to see the beginnings of a world in which AIs, robots, become part of your everyday existence. They're going to be in your homes, they're going to be driving your cars, they're going to be working alongside you. So what are the things as a human being that you can do to make sure that you're still relevant and effective? Well, there's three pieces of advice I'd like to give you. The first is, you need to change the way you solve problems. So let me tell you a story about Elon Musk. I'm sure many of you have heard of who he is. Not this Elon Musk, who's kind of cool and kind of in control. I'm talking about this Elon Musk, who was super nerdy. He just sold his first company, PayPal, and he was bored. So Elon Musk decided one day that he thought for fun he would try to build a rocket and send it to Mars. Now the problem was that no one had any rockets that he could buy. NASA was not doing it anymore, and he heard a rumor that the Russians were selling intercontinental ballistic missiles to anyone who wanted to buy them. I don't know how that happened. I guess it was the fall of the Soviet Union. There were some people there who were trying to sell stuff. Anyway, Elon Musk goes to Russia. He heard he could buy all these rockets for $7 million each. He thought he would get 3 of them. He goes to Russia. He meets a bunch of Russians. They go out. And then the Russians start laughing at him. They say, listen, these rockets aren't $7 million. We've seen you got lots of money. We now want $20 million each. So Elon Musk was upset, and he went home, and on the plane home he thought, how hard could this be? I mean, surely a rocket is just, metal, rocket fuel, engineering. He started reading books about rockets, and said, you know what, this can't be this hard. What if I could actually just do this myself? Now I know this sounds ridiculous, but about 10 years later, well, I guess he showed everyone wrong. He not only figured out how to build a rocket, he built a rocket that could take off and land by itself. In fact, the latest version of his rocket is actually predicted to be able to carry 150 full-size elephants into orbit. Now, the minute he does that, you're going to see the beginning of an entirely new space industry. Now, why am I telling you this story? Because Elon Musk is successful, not because he's rich. He's successful because when someone tells him that he can't do something, when someone laughs at him and says it's impossible, when someone says that there's never been anyone who's done this before, he goes back to the beginning, he starts with first principles, and he finds a way to solve the problem. So this is a great talent that, even in an age of machines, that we need to adopt. The second piece of advice I would give you, if you want to stay relevant even in this age of AI, is learn to focus on people, not just numbers. So you might have picked up already that I've got an unusual background. My mother is actually Chinese, Malaysia. Are any Malaysians here? Okay. My mum is actually from Penang. Okay, you sound excited. My dad is English. So I grew up in London, and During the 80s, my father was actually the CEO of Harrods. Have any of you been to Harrods, the department store? Okay. It's one of the most famous department stores in the world. And if it was 1985 and you were there at Harrods, if you've been to the food court, and you were there in the 80s, you would have seen a little kid on a stool crying. That was me. Because every Saturday my dad would drag me to the department store, he'd find a chair and say, "Kid, sit, shut up, watch." I thought he was punishing me. Years later I realized he was showing me how he worked. Because every Saturday he would go to the store and he would watch the customers. He would watch what they were wearing. He would watch the products they were looking at. He would watch how they were moving around the merchandise. Because whatever the reports the management team presented, whatever the financial numbers, Saturday is when he connected with the customer. Now, I don't need to tell you this, because if you're in this room today, you are the best sales leaders at using it, which means you already know the power of community, the power of social selling, the power of understanding the people that you connect with. And that's an important lesson in this world we're moving into, in this world of data and machines. Because I kind of think if my father was still alive, he'd be doing what you do. He'd be trying to understand the future by looking at the behavior of your customers today. The final piece of advice I will give you is this. Get better at embracing uncertainty. Do any of you here watch Ted Lasso? Any of you fancy Ted Lasso, the TV show? Okay, it's one of my favorite shows. So I'm going to show you this clip from the TV show, and then I'm going to explain why I think it's such important advice for the future.
Guys have underestimated me my entire life. And for years, I never understood why. It used to really bother me. But then one day, I was driving my little boy to school, and I saw this quote by Walt Whitman. It was painted on the wall there. It says, "Be curious, not judgmental." I like that. So I get back in my car, I'm driving to work, and all of a sudden it hits me. All them fellas that used to belittle me, not a single one of them were curious. You know, they thought they had everything all figured out, so they judged everything. They judged everyone. And I realized that they're underestimating me. Who I was had nothing to do with it. Because if they were curious, they would ask questions. You know? Questions like, have you played a lot of darts, Ted? Which I would have answered, yes, sir. Every Sunday afternoon at a sports bar with my father from age 10 until I was 16, he passed away. Barbecue sauce.
I love that piece of advice. Be curious, not judgmental. Because it's so easy when you look at the world that we're in now. Maybe even as you've been listening to my talk today and I was showing you the robots and the AIs, maybe a little part of you was like, this is terrifying, right? Maybe you even were thinking, maybe I get to retire before any of this happens. You know what? Here's good and bad news. The bad news is, if you're here today, it's already too late. We're all on this roller coaster to health. The good news is that I think you're going to be okay. And more than okay, this is going to be the most interesting, challenging, fascinating work career that you've ever had. Because this is the moment, like Ted Lasso says, where we have to be open-minded, rather than being judgmental and trying to do things that made us successful in the past. We have to be curious. We have to be open-minded. We have to be ready to embrace an entirely new world of opportunities. And that's not going to be easy. That's why you need to be bold. So, like I said to you, in this new world that's coming, we're going to need a new set of skills, a new set of strategies. I wrote about a lot of these in my book, The Algorithmic Leader, How to Be Smart When Machines Are Smarter Than You. It's actually been translated in Chinese, Japanese, Korean. You know what? I know you're never going to read that book, so just take a picture of this QR code instead. You take a picture of that code, it'll immediately give me access to your home network. So, I'll be talking to you from your home speaker. No, I'm joking. This is just a link to my YouTube channel. What I figured is that no one's got time to read books, so just watch videos instead. So I've created videos. But what I want you to realize is that none of us really know what's going to happen in the future. We're all learning, but we're on this journey together. So what you can do to prepare is be optimistic, but also realize that you need a deep understanding of both human values, but also you need to master some of these new technical skills as well. So as a kind of a challenge to you, think about this. What new technologies, tools, apps can you personally commit to in the next 12 months? After my talk in the next few days, do some research. Write a list of the things that you want to try in the next 12 months. And then be a role model for the people around you. Here's a final mind grenade for you to think about. Just imagine it's 5 years from now. There's some bright young person who's trying to decide what they're going to do with their career. They may be thinking about joining a tech company, an AI startup. If you were going to persuade that person to follow in your footsteps and do the job that you're doing today, what would be your most impressive argument to that young person? What would you need to change in your world today in order to make that true? So it's been a lot of fun talking to you. I'd love to connect with you. You can follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or X. And if you want the slides for today, I've also put them for you online. So if you follow that URL, you can actually download the recommendations I gave you. But what I want you to remember is that thinking about the future is not thinking about technology. It's thinking about people. And more than that, it's being ready to accept that the world of 2035 is going to be much more different than what you expect. I mean, think about it, 2035, you realize this is going to be 28 years after the first iPhone. It'll be 23 years after the first consumer VR device, the Oculus Rift. It would be 13 years after ChatGPT, 11 years after the Apple Vision Pro. 2035 will be a world in which the real and the virtual will be forever intertwined. How do you prepare for a world like that? What does it take to be all in on the future? Well, you're going to have to think big. You're going to have to think new. But most importantly, you're going to have to think quick. Because if there's one thing I can tell you, as a futurist, with any certainty, it is actually simply this. The future is now. Thank you very much.